Well, hello and good morning, and welcome to Automotive Management Live. Consumer behavior is changing rapidly and is bringing fresh opportunities and challenges for retailers and OEMs alike. So I'm delighted today to welcome James Fernandez, Chief Revenue Officer of Keyloop, to discuss what's happening in the market, where the future lies. The format is James will talk for a few minutes, perhaps a quarter of an hour, and then we'll give plenty of time for questions for the audience. So if you have any questions, please remember them, jot them down, and hopefully we'll get through as many as we can. So with no further ado, James, over to you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Absolute pleasure to be back at AM Live. For me, it's quite notable. I've been with Keyloop just over a year, so this was my first industry event last year. One of the things I did quite rapidly after that is clearly went and visited and spoke to a number of customers. In fact, I was just talking to some colleagues from Motors, so I was down in Joburg only last week. And one of the things from Winnipeg to Singapore, from Helsinki down to Joburg, there's a common refrain. This is an industry in transformation, and it's transforming at pace. I've spent my entire career in technology, but really focused on industries in transformation. And latterly, I came out of the airline industry, and you can imagine as we went through COVID, that is an industry that had sort of existential problems as to how it was going to survive. It had changes in consumer behavior, and it also was pivoting to embrace an omni-channel world. Now, some of those things sound fairly familiar to the automotive industry. But things I found that were a surprise for me and that are different is that the OEMs are operating with different strategies, that the consumer behaviors are changing, and actually, as a retail network, it's very non-homogeneous. Different in the UK, different within regions. And so accommodating that on a industry transformational journey makes things super challenging. So what I thought I would do over the next 15 minutes is just share some of the guiding principles and thoughts we have at Keyloop and that I'm using myself to work out where our North Star is as we really look to be an ever better partner for this industry transformation. So we phrase this as the old world is disappearing, and it's disappearing at pace. And we have all the reasons why that might be. You know, we have EV. What's the predictability about ICE to EV transformation? New entrants, non-captive finance. So there are a number of things taking place at an industry level that are requiring us to change. But coupled with that is the fact that everyone's gone digital. And nowhere did I saw that in the airline industry. I'm seeing it clear and present in the automotive business. The expectations of consumers have changed, and they've changed forever. And I'll give you an example. When I joined a year ago, I had the opportunity to step into taking a salary sacrifice vehicle. I decided I would have a dabble with electric vehicles. I hadn't had one, and I thought if I'm going to be part of this industry, I want to understand what that experience is. I did the entire purchasing of that vehicle without ever seeing anybody or going into a physical location. So that is an example of how my behavior changed, something to do with COVID, something to do with convenience, but I had gone digital. And literally the first time that I actually saw the vehicle was it turned up in my driveway. And that was unusual. I'm 53 years old, right? So, but I did go to my kids to go and look in YouTube and make sure I wasn't making a stupid dad decision. And what we term this is a relevancy crisis. So I'm not going to talk too much about technology today. I'm going to talk about how we're thinking about how we can better support you. And if I think about what that means, exactly what I was talking about in terms of my behaviors have changed, and they change for a particular use case. If I go to my eldest son, a vehicle is simply a mode of getting from A to B. My youngest son, however, is a complete petrol head, and he will have a completely different view of the world. So that is making it incredibly challenging for you that we're supporting in making sure that you continue to be relevant at the right time, at the right place, and in an always-on culture. There are some elements to this, though. So there were various studies that have been done. The first one is about, it says lost value, but actually I think there's perceived value. 75% of people are prepared to pay a premium if you get the customer experience right. I think that's critical. Where margins are tight, that's what you're aiming for. But equally, there's a level of lost trust. And I think going into a car dealership to buy a vehicle can be quite off-putting for people. And making sure that you can open and have a much more transparent relationship and building that trust, I think is going to be the difference between winning and losing. And the other part is nearly 3/4 of people say, given this barrage of digital inbound, just make sure that it's personalized to me and that you've put some thought, care, and attention in how you're talking with me as a potential customer. So what we're driving in Keyloop is what we call the relevancy imperative. It is super important that we remain relevant to this changing consumer behavior. And actually, if you think about it, if you get that timing right, that engagement right, that is when those key moments of trust are won. And I think the other part is that then breeds loyalty. So one part is sales part of the journey, the other is clearly the after-sales part of the journey, which is going to be hyper-relevant to us all as we go forward. And actually, in my EV experience, so the sales piece was absolutely seamless. But I'm a year on in, and I'm now having to think about, do I have to call somebody about maintenance for the vehicle? What do I do next? How do I engage? I don't have actually a person or a face that I can go to and just talk about this. So now the onus of responsibility is back on me. Done right, they would work in, I'm a year on in, how's your experience gone? Can we help? I'm not getting that, right? So part of what we need to do is provide you the tools and capabilities to do that. And I think got right, that is where high margins are won. And in the airline industry, one of the other huge parts that is probably a pain for all of us is where you start to pay for nearly everything, right? So you buy your seat, you buy a ticket, everything else comes at a charge. But actually, that is ancillary revenues and margins are going to be a very important way forward for this industry. So, bringing some of those thought processes to our technology and to you is going to be an important part of the conversation. But what does relevancy imperative really mean? Well, we unpack that by really saying it's moving from function out to experience in. Function out to experience in. We operate in worlds that are full of friction-filled silos, be it processes, organizations, technology. And what we need to do together is change that into seamless, really delightful experiences. And I don't say that lightly. I think you got that right, there is a real engagement with the consumers. Moving from car dealers to experience centers. I was visiting a large client in Europe of ours. They built a fantastic headquarters. Downstairs, it's effectively a car museum. They've been around for a long time. It's spectacular. And then I looked at, walked around all the floors around where the operations were going on. Talk about friction-filled silos. They had every function in the business pretty much lined up around the offices. So they were breaking down the barriers of how they thought about the services that they were going to deliver. Perhaps my favorite as we were going through this repositioning for Keyloop was from closing a sale to opening a relationship. And that feels super, super relevant because actually if you think about how you measure a sale, probably in days and weeks, you're talking about the post-sale experience in months and years. And getting that right is critical. So I think moving from closing a sale to opening a relationship is going to be a big part of this. Moving from the four walls to saying, actually, we're boundless. We can be anywhere you want us to be at any time. That's, again, a big shift. I think stopping maybe relying on sales superpower, and particularly in a world where we're struggling to get great talent and retaining great talent, and we're wanting to change that experience, equipping them to be able to do different roles, to do sales, after sales, just general customer experience is another critical part in this journey. We talked about moving from hidden truths, that bit of I'll go and talk to the manager or it's all behind the screen, to being a much more open and trusted engagement. Now clearly some of the agency model is going to change that and make things slightly more transparent, but I think we have more work to do in that area. And then finally, it's switching from you come to us to we come to you, and how we can enable that in both a physical and a digital world. So what does it take? First of all, be distinctive. Be really clear that at every, what touch points you have. I think I saw a study done by Google a while back, said there are 900 touch points in a sort of consumer life cycle for vehicles. 900 touch points, and we're trying to stitch all of that together. So make sure that we're thinking about that. Be distinctive, be clear about your purpose. The second part is be unified. And I did a lot of work in my previous life around identifying consumer personas, so that if you turned up at the gate and you were using a different phone number, I could pick up whether you were working, maybe going on travel, business, or on leisure. And we'd identify, you've got kids with you. We could target you with different products and services as you went through that chain. But that was only achieved by having a really good view of the customer. The final part is the third part is about making this frictionless. And again, talking about how do we elevate human performance supplemented by digital. This is still an industry, quite rightly, that requires and will need people to work with people. But we need to supplement that in the right way. And then the final 2 points for us is really saying, harness the ecosystem that's around us today, because with those 900 touch points, we cannot do it all ourselves. And then, quite parochially from a Keyloop perspective, we've recognized that we've got to unlock the DMSs. The DMSs have been too closed for too long, and it's beholden on us to open them up, to use that richness of data. It is the system of record. It has phenomenal complication in it. It has a breadth and depth of capability that is phenomenal, but getting access to it has been hard, and we are part of that journey. Our commitment is to open that up, to allow you to use that DMS foundation, the ERP, and then couple that with a whole range of applications, either from us or our partners or competitors. And talking about that, that's why we've classed what we're doing as around an experience-first platform. At the heart of it remains the DMS. But we had to open that up. And so we are investing significant millions of euros every year in making sure that we can open up the DMS, we can actually share data in the right way, in a controlled and structured way. I also saw coming into the business too much of where we were building bowls of spaghetti of code, and that is not a good place to be. It doesn't allow us to grow sustainably. At the moment, so we built this active data core, and it does two things. It effectively has what we call a unified data model, is a data dictionary. It allows you to say a customer in one system is called the same in another system, and we can do that translation, that Babel fish, if you will, between all the systems and the data, data storage areas that you have. But the other part is to make sure we invested in APIs and opening that up. Today, we are processing about 2 billion API transactions a year. So this isn't research and development, this is done at scale. And that is our mandate, is to make sure that we remain relevant for you. So I'm a year in, that is my mandate, is to make sure that we are, as you're going through your journey, we're there with you every step along the way, and that we're also making sure that what we're doing is relevant, which is why I also encourage our teams to make sure we're engaging and talking with you in the right way. And around the outside, we are building applications, we're partnering. It's fantastic to be here to see a number of partners in our ecosystem, and also recognizing that there has to be space for competition, and there has to be space for you to be developing your own applications, and we have to facilitate that. And if we're good, you'll want to buy from us, and if we're less good, you'll buy from our competition. And that's the bargain. But being experience first, listening, and opening up our technology is going to be critical, I think, for us as an important part of the industry. So I'm going to say sort of final few words around this. Transformation and change is bandied around a lot, but this is definitely an industry in the midst of it. As I look at it, and I look at our own journey as Keyloop, it is difficult, it is hard, right? And actually, we will all make missteps along the way, but we have to do it, and we have to do it at pace. So, for us, if you can get some of this right, and if you use experience first as your North Star, whenever I talk to our teams and they're a little bit lost of where's our direction, where should we be putting emphasis, my refrain is experience first. Are we delivering the best possible experience we can? And to be honest, we fail at that a lot of the time, right? But we are on a crusade to make it better, because that is the only way we will succeed, and we will help you be better as an industry. And I think if we do that right, we can achieve relevancy at pace. We can make sure that the talent that we have in our industry and bringing young talent in will stay. And I think I'll finish on the moving from closing a sale to opening a relationship, to me, is probably the best moniker for that possible. It's been fantastic to share a few moments with you. Please do come and visit us on the stand. It's very big, it's very blue, you can't miss us, we have coffee. And I would say we've got a bonus to a white paper that we launched that's exclusive to AM Live. There's a QR code on the stand. Please come by, scan it. Most importantly, we're interested in engaging and listening to the conversations that we can have for the future. So thank you very much. I'm in your hands.
Grab a stool. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sure we can find a microphone. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, just behind you is a microphone.
Wondering how easy you found it engaging with the different DMS suppliers and getting them to open their vaults of data.
Well, I can start with us, right? So we've got 7 of them. And that's why we are doing investment. It is hard. They are complicated beasts. They have technical debt, but we're robust in doing that. We are focused on building robust APIs so that it can scale. I think that's one of the things that we recognize is to do this properly, you've got to really spend time, effort, and money doing this. It's taken a little longer than we'd anticipated, but as I said, we're at scale. We're actually talking to OEMs at the moment who are coming to us and saying, actually, the platform component of what you're building, irrespective of the DMS as a DSP, we're super interested in what you're doing there. Can you help us be the middleware to other DMSs? And that's certainly a journey that we're happy to do. I think we have a recognition sometimes of the difficulties and intricacies of getting proper bidirectional data integrity. But I think it's a journey we're all on, and if we're not on it, then we're going to lose.
James, I'd like to ask where the sweet spot lies, or how you can find the sweet spot between the digital process of the consumer, some of which is, I know there's exploration of AI in managing that, and then the human interface, and where you find the sweet spot to intervene and actually start building that relationship as on a much more human level rather than a digital level.
So I think if you think about friction-filled silos, I think making sure that as whatever organization you're in, you're clear about what you're trying to do, you're clear about joining up processes and baton changes, as I call them, to make sure that you're placing the baton into somebody's hand, not just throwing it to somebody. I think underpinning that, I think data has a huge role to play in that, extracting data in the right way, making sure that it flows properly through those joined up processes is key. And then clearly AI has an enormous role to play in supplementing humans being better, and in cases replacing them, and making sure that we're able to be always on and always relevant. But I think, first of all, be clear on your processes, make sure you understand what data fuels those processes, and then start to layer that with technology, including AI, to help you be more effective.
Do you have any questions? Any hands raised? Yes, sir.
Hello, James. My name is Paul Bennett. I'm
Hi.
listening to your purchase experience with your new vehicle, which clearly on a new vehicle is to be expected, one hopes. I've leased a number of vehicles in the past that have been delivered on the back of a trailer and been very happy with them. But of course, that digital journey, whilst it's extremely important across the whole car buying ecosystem, on used cars, of course, that comes into a different genre, and the consumer perhaps won't be quite so keen to press enter and have it arrive to find perhaps it's not exactly as the photographs suggested.
Yes, I think that's a very well-made point. I do think as maybe trust and transparency improves, there will be a shift. Not in all cases, but you can imagine genuinely used, approved, with a brand I trust, with a relationship that I have that allows me to take maybe that little extra leap of faith than I would in a new vehicle, I think comes true. But this is not a universal truth, and I think it's one of the joys and complexities of our industry is how to level set across all of those. No, but it's a very good point.
Jim, just talking about that consumer experience, with the development of agency models and the dealer relationship changing with the OEM, how does dealers and OEMs make sure that that's a harmonized experience that the customer sees and not two different worlds?
Yes. Well, I'm in a room full of experts, and I've been in the industry for a year. I think my reflection on it is, again, it's not the same. One of these big European dealers that I was fortunate enough to go and spend some time with, they said, we're somewhat brand agnostic. Our model is we're never going to be 20 minutes away from our consumers, right? At a footprint, either sales or after sales. I go to others and it's no, we embrace the agency model. It's super relevant for us. Actually, it takes balance sheet items off, unifies pricing discussions. That's really powerful for us. Our focus is now, how do we act as the right model agent for you, but actually can start to build a relationship for what's then to come after the sale, right? So I think there is still work to go. I think it's really hard for the retailers in the room, from what I can see, particularly where you have OEMs that may be all operating at slightly different paces and with different strategies. How do you accommodate that? I had a meeting last week, as I said. I saw four OEMs and 7 customers, and some of the customers were multi-franchise, multi-brand dealerships, and they were having to deal with quite schizophrenic behavior, right? One OEM saying no, thumping the table and saying, no, it has to work this way, and you tell them it's going to work this way. I go to another dealer and they want to have a completely different strategy for learning and training and development, for instance. And I think it was super hard for an OEM to be in that midst to work out how to do that. Ultimately, not wanting to reinforce this, but if both parties said, are we delivering the right customer experience? Because if I'm an OEM, if I'm a European OEM, with a number of entrants coming in, I'd start to be paying quite close attention as to brand loyalty. I have 0 brand loyalty to European manufacturers today. 0. And I think that should be something that they're paying attention to. And I think there does need to be a realization that the retail network has an important place pre and post sale. In my airline world, Michael O'Leary and Stelios set up, buy direct, keep it cheap. All the legacy carriers started to try to do the same. They said, we're going to sell direct, we're going to cut out travel agents. That was a spectacular failure because they realized that all the corporate travel they were going to start losing, and they're the ones that fill up the front of the cabin, not the back of the cabin, which is where they make the money. They had to think about who are we serving, how do we service them better, and actually we just have to be realistic. This is not a one-channel world, this is an omni-channel retailing world. That was a long answer to a pretty short question.
Just building on that point, clearly the automotive sector is going through this disruption right now. Are there other industries that are perhaps 5 years ahead, maybe a little more, from which everybody could learn successes and failures?
So I talked about the airline industry, which is one I know. I mean, a lot of industry has gone through disruption. I think what I found in 12 months here is the OEM retailer differences do have a unique set of circumstances, I think, in this industry. So I think you've got to pick your way through that. So I don't think anybody's gone through quite the same as this, but I would say, anybody in retailing, airline industry in particular, I think has some analogies. But the confluence of industry change coupled with consumer behavior, I think is, I'm not sure it's unique. I'd be interested in people's views, but it feels pretty unique to me in terms of, I've been around for 25 years and doing technology, and it seems pretty complicated to me.
Thank you. Time's running a little bit tight, so do we have any more questions? Just
for the hard of hearing, can you turn up this radio mic? Because I feel like walking in here to listen to this. Or just shout, I think.
Hi there. Gone through an online experience for purchasing a vehicle, which I guess you would probably have on something like a 36 or a 48-month agreement. What's your expectation as a consumer, but also as the leader of a business, as to what happens at 12 months out, you're due to replace that vehicle?
Super. So I'm trying to not to do now product plug, but I probably end up butchering it, and I will. We have, particular finance retention tools. I think this golden moment, and talk about relevancy of, if I know the asset value of a car, I know my behavior, maybe my lifestyle's changed. If you can get me 6 months, 9 months ahead and say, by the way, we can switch you into a new vehicle, you may be upselling, cross-selling, or even downselling in some cases, but keeping that relationship. I think there are golden moments to be had by using not just the financial residual value data of the vehicle and the financing you have, but also where you are maybe as a person. And I think if you get that right, those are those golden moments where you can get a discussion to a consumer that just feels timely and relevant. And if you can do that in a way that allows them to do that they're not being pressured into it, maybe even set up a small microsite for those that are, want to use technology, where I can go and play around. We've got a walk model walk, so that you can go and go, well, if I change this vehicle, my payments go up by 10, 15 euros a month or pounds a month. I think those are ways of thinking about this in a different way. Does that answer your question, or was it a slightly different question?
It does answer the question. I was just trying to sort of get an idea of consumer versus leader of a business. Sort of you as the consumer have purchased a car that way.
Yes.
But then as a leader of the business, and you have several products that as a retention tool. Right?
So
the differences in terms of consumer versus leader.
Well, we're probably always going to look at it with a slightly different lens, right? I mean, we're not a charity, so any of us right in this room will look at this of how do we make sure we have long-term value, might be a better way of looking at it, right? Yes, there can be some maybe incremental gains. I think we're in a world now of saying, how do we build longer time, lifetime value with customers? And as a leader of business and as a consumer, if you give that experience to me right, and you build that trust, then I'm going to pay a premium for that. So, and I would look at that as a win-win, net win-win. Okay?
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, it just leaves it for me to say thank you very much to James Fernandez from Keyloop. Thank you, James. It's been
Thank you
excellent.
very much. Thank you.
That's great.